15. The next item on the agenda is citizen comments for things that are not on the agenda. Kind of hear something. By the way, happy Valentine's, everybody. If you haven't done something for your Valentine, please do. And I see no citizens that are wanting to make a comment. I would ask Mr. Stuckey if he might just give a brief update on the water main break on Lewisburg Pike that's affecting some of our residents.
We are working a water main break. Happened earlier today in the area along Lewisburg Pike between Carton Lane and Carriage Park. So that area has been impacted, and in order to fix that water main break, we've got to shut water off, and it's impacting specifically the Heath Place neighborhood. So we're going through and working on that now. A number of us have been out there this afternoon just to look at it, and a lot of work going on. I would expect, we've been working with TDOT as well, with that being a state route, and it looks that we will likely be closing that road sometime around 6 or a little bit later. That will allow it to more efficiently work on the break and get that repaired. It's always hard to estimate the time for when you're going to get these things done. Right now, the last thing I heard was somewhere between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock that we hope to have that fixed. We hope on the earlier side, but don't know till we're in there and getting everything done. I think we'll be able to get the water main done pretty quickly. The road repair will be a little longer and coming probably from in terms of the recovery from there. But that is ongoing. We've sent word out early this afternoon to the HOA of that neighborhood and tried to get the word out through media and other sources so folks would be aware, and we'll continue to work it.
Okay, and I apologize, I didn't recognize you. Want to come on up? We have a citizen comment. If you'd state your name and have a seat and in front of the microphone and say who you are, and we'll give you just a few minutes to make a comment.
All right. Thanks, sir. I'm Jack Wheeler. I volunteer with Ride for Kids. I know that there was a newspaper article the first of the month that had some questions about Ride for Kids, for what it could do for Franklin and probably what it did. I don't know if you know about Ride for Kids, but it works with the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation. They raise money to fund research for pediatric brain tumors. Started in 1984. It was a newspaper executive, Mike Trainer, had a co-worker whose son had a brain tumor. He watched this family suffer for 2 years maybe, while this child underwent all the therapy, the radiation and everything, and eventually he died. And Mike Trainer made it a mission to try to raise funds for that. His first ride was in Atlanta. It raised $4,000. And since 1984, it has been expanded across the United States. Now there are about 40 rides a year to raise money for this. Duke University is the main recipient of their funds. And all the research that Duke does, they share with all the hospitals, St. Jude, all throughout the United States and Canada. And Honda Motor Corporation is a corporate sponsor. They give a motorcycle away at each ride. So that is a main thing. They have Geico Insurance as a corporate sponsor. And Dunlop Tires, helmet manufacturer, luggage manufacturer, that give away different items for drawings at each event. So they have some corporate sponsors that help. And this ride is in its, this will be the 4th year for it.
Okay, sir.
We do.
Anybody have any questions regarding it?
I think I brought up the issue, but I've already had my questions resolved. There was a gentleman from Murfreesboro sent me the 990s of the audits and the state charitable solicitation letter. and all the information that I asked for, so I had no questions and wasn't planning on raising any tonight, so.
Okay. But,
Very good.
Yeah, if y'all want to know anything else, I'll be glad to tell you.
Sound like you're a great volunteer, and
We-
thanks for making a comment for us.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate your comment.
I appreciate your time.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Ms.
Right,
Boylan.
Right, okay.
And that
Next.
item is on your consent agenda at the 7 o'clock meeting tonight.
Next is presentation by Franklin tomorrow regarding community visioning process update. Two familiar faces.
Hi there. I'm going to get a cup of water to take home with me tonight, maybe. If I can actually get home,
Just don't go home early.
don't go home early. Well,
There's
there's,
still one lane open, Walter.
yeah, and there's 2 meetings tonight, so who will get home early? So that's great. But Mindy Tate, Executive Director for Franklin Tomorrow, and I think you all know Kathy Moore, and she's our board president this year. We had our first breakfast with the mayors on January 31st at Rolling Hills Community Church, and many of you were there, where we presented the outcomes of the Vision Fair, but we did want to come to you tonight, for those of you who weren't able to be there, and for the general public, to talk a little bit about the vision process, the Vision Fair process, and that has been at the center of the work of Franklin Tomorrow since it was founded now 11 years ago. The Vision Fair that we held in 2011 was the culmination of more than a year of hard work by hundreds of volunteers working in strategy groups, led by a hard-working group of co-chairs, to evaluate the existing goals and strategies in 9 areas, and you know what those are, but I can say them off the top of my head: business, community character, education, environment, government, growth and development, housing, recreation, and transportation. And former Alderman Dan Klatt served as strategy group coordinator for that 18-month process, and he attended well over what I would say were 120 meetings during that process among the 9 strategy groups, and just the work that he did for us was amazing.
Each group evaluated the existing goal that we had worked on in the past 5 years, and then they re-identified some underlying strategies for each of those goals. And they tried to look at them to see if they were still valid or if they needed to be revised. And they developed new goals in each one of those areas and about 67 strategies. So then we went on the road, and we went to civic clubs, we went to public events, neighborhoods. For example, we were downtown for the chili cook-off, and we had all of those Vision Fair boards there. Everybody got 5 dots, and they were able to choose the strategies that they felt were most important for the future of Franklin. We ended up with about 1,000 people who participated throughout the entire process, including the strategy groups as well as those who participated in sharing their little 5 dots. Bank South sponsored this for us, and Barge, Wagner, Sumner, and Cannon have produced the goal boards that you'll see when you come over to our office.
And we're just going to quickly review the top strategies in each area in order of how they finished. The top strategy was in recreation, to implement the Greenway and Open Space Master Plan and Streetscape. Second was environment, encourage continued development of connected greenways for walking and bicycling. Business, promoting a business-friendly environment. Transportation, promote improved traffic signal timing, ride-sharing, telecommuting, flexible work arrangements, and other transportation demand management programs. Housing, support efforts to eliminate barriers to the development of affordable workforce, senior, and special needs housing. Those were the top 5. Sixth was growth and development, contextual design that embraces Franklin's historic and natural characteristics. 7 was education, facilitate support for further development of the Williams County Center for Higher Education on the Columbia State Community College's Franklin campus. I think that can get a round of applause from this group. Community character, enhance and preserve the physical character of existing neighborhoods. Government, improve coordination between and among government entities, schools, private utilities, and their respective staffs to discuss how to better facilitate the delivery of essential services and infrastructure. Also, you just received the preliminary report of the top 5 strategies in each of the 9 areas. So there were additional strategies developed by the strategy groups in each category, but these were the top 5. We haven't lost sight of all the work that those strategy groups did, but we have concentrated on the top 5 in each category.
As we looked at those strategies, what was immediately obvious to us was that connectivity was the main theme throughout the entire process. We looked at the groups and their agreement on the top priorities. And again, greenways and open space master plan and the continuation of streetscape scored as the top strategy in 2 of 9 categories. These same topics were also addressed and finished in the top 5 in business, community character, growth and development, and transportation, which really shows the broad-based support of citizens for greater connectivity and alternate transportation modes. Creation of a pro-business environment, including such tactics as a streamlined project approval process, received top billing in business, as well as growth and development, and additionally, transportation and community character addressed the elements of the pro-business environment as well. Not surprising for any of us who live, work, and play here, transportation emerged in 3 areas as a very important choice of citizens with such tactics as synchronization of traffic signals at peak traffic hours. With the completion of the business of the Vision Fair process, we now know what citizens believe are important, and we believe that the next step for us will be to develop 3 project teams, and those will be environment and recreation, business and development, and transportation. And we're hoping to interweave all of the themes that we see in this work of the 9 strategy groups into those 3 project teams as we move forward. And we're going to be further analyzing the strategies and goals and seeking ways to collaborate with you as well as other civic groups who are already working in these areas. We will also advocate for the strategies as appropriate with local government.
Another group which will be studying and seeking implementation of the city's adopted Greenways and Open Space Master Plan is Friends of Franklin Parks, LLC, which is a sister organization of Franklin and Morrow. As you know, we founded that in April 2011. That board is working closely with the city's Parks Department to identify key areas where connectivity can be heightened through completion of trails or construction of bridges. We continually meet with them to look at ways we can work together on grants, because often when you see collaboration, when a private foundation or other entity sees collaboration, you score extra points for that. So we're really looking at ways that we can enhance that, and meeting with Lisa Clayton, Anna Shuford, and her staff there, as well as with Andrew Orr, your city sustainability director, who's helped us a great deal with getting ideas on grants and looking at those and identifying. And we're continuing to talk about the Vision Fair outcomes at various civic clubs and to other groups, and are encouraged at the number of volunteers who want to join our efforts on behalf of the future of Franklin. Just yesterday, I spoke to the Williamson County Cool Springs Kiwanis Club, and there might have been 15 people there, but 4 of them signed up to be part of project teams. So there's a great deal of interest and a great deal of care in our community for the future of the city. And we encourage you as leaders of our city to consider joining a project team. Franklin MR also appreciates the open door we found working with Eric and his leaders, and we look forward to working with him more closely and the leadership team. We've discussed how we can do that in the future, and we're very excited about that. If you have any questions about anything, we'll be happy to answer that. Or we'd just like also to invite you to our ribbon cutting tomorrow, Wednesday, February 15th at 4:30 at our new office at 198 East Main Street at Cadence Bank Building. We're on the 2nd floor. This is the kickoff of a new series that we're undertaking called Franklin Tonight. Thank you, Mary Kate Brown, for the idea of the name. I tell her I have to always credit her, but thank you for the idea of the name, and we'll be doing that on a monthly basis. This new office allows us that opportunity to bring people together, to engage the community, to foster collaboration, so that we are advocating for what people here in Franklin believe is important for the future of the city. So we'll answer any questions if you have any, or be happy to.
Questions?
I just wanted to know, you picked up business, environment, and transportation to work on? Why were those picked?
Well, there are the
Because
top,
they
they top 5, or as you go down the
It's like
order.
1 to 9, 9 is transportation.
It's not in order.
It's not in order. Yeah, it's recreation, environment, business, transportation, and housing and growth and development were the top 6.
Maybe you could send the actual
Yeah, I was
1 through
sort of
9
interested
list.
I
in
will.
what were the top.
Sure.
I'll do that. I'm sorry. I thought that list had been put together in that order, so I
You
apologize.
said recreation was one, and then what?
Recreation, environment, business, transportation, housing, growth and development, education, community character, and then government. And we've also provided Eric with a more detailed report that was provided by the strategy groups that can give you some more insight and perhaps help you if you do want to become involved in a project team. We envision that they will meet probably once a month, have some subcommittees that are working on different aspects of that. And we have Jim Roberts and Miles Mennel who will be working to coordinate those groups along with the support of our consultant, Dan Klatt.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for your hard work. Number 4, presentation of commercial building plan review, overview, and process improvement recommendations.
One of the things you just heard Franklin Demaro talk about in one of their key strategy groups is promoting a pro-business or business-friendly environment. And one component of that is how we work with folks who submit plan review items for us and are working on developing space, whether it's office space or a restaurant or whatever it might be out in our community. And we've had a group of our staff, especially from the Department of Building and Neighborhood Services, take a look at what we do and how we do it, and look for opportunities to be more efficient, more responsive to the folks that bring us plans. And we have set for ourselves deadlines and have done that very effectively, but we continue to look for ways to make that process better and more responsive. And so have Vernon kind of kick it off, and we have a whole team behind me that's going to come up and talk about the work they've been doing, and excited to share this with you tonight.
Well, good evening. Happy Valentine's Day.
Where's your red? We won't
It's
ask
in my
anymore.
Good answer.
I think a guy from Wisconsin would have lots of red and white.
Before we get started, I'd like to ask Chris Bridgewater, who's our interim Building and Neighborhood Services Director, to share with you a little bit of what he's been doing with the team over in the department as far as looking at how we serve our customers and our residents. And one of the things that we always talk about, and this really, the presentation tonight that the employees will make, really gets to the heart of this, is that the majority of our residents may in their lifetime never visit City Hall. But if they do, and they're contemplating an improvement, for example, to their home, their largest investment, that we want to be responsive to them. That it's incumbent upon us to give them the attention. They may just wander in, ask some questions, and that's one of the reasons why the group of our employees are here tonight. Not only to help small business entrepreneurs, corporate businesses with commercial building plan reviews, but really maintaining that time to be responsive to our residents. So I'm going to ask Chris to share some things and some of the ideas that he's been doing over the last couple months.
Well, basically, what I have just really keyed on is some things to improve our processes. Things that, in making the transition from a small town mentality where we do things one thing at a time to where we can service a growing city. Particularly, tonight, Building and Neighborhood Services, currently we offer a full range of plan reviews at a competitive price in 20 working days or less. Our team has put together a proposal for your consideration that will give applicants with large-scale plans, a lot more flexibility in their choices and allow us to be more responsive to small businesses, applicants who need to get things done more quickly. Also, some of the things that in the future that we're looking to do is to make the transition from a paper-based organization to a digital-based organization, to where you can be at our office and do things, and you can also be at a remote site and do things. And those are the projects that, Vernon and I are working together on, and that we're assigning our team to chip away at piece by piece and bring our department into a bigger type city mentality. Tonight we have Doug and Rodney and Alan here to talk about it, and also Shannon and Amanda to speak about our new plan review proposal.
And as they get started here, it really begins with the commercial building plan review process. And right now, as Chris mentioned, it takes 20 working days. We guarantee to return those plans back, but we review them as quickly as possible. Now, why are reviewing plans so important? And if you ask that entrepreneur or small business, and you probably heard it, they're in the business to run what they do best. But they need to be operational ASAP, particularly tenants, which we have a lot of in the community. Once they work with a building manager or building owner, they sign a lease, and then they engage a design professional to prepare plans and submit them to us and to review them. And the least we can do is to be predictable, okay? And then, obviously, they still need to order materials, order merchandise, prepare to hire employees, and do whatever it takes to move from one location or to move into another location. Now, again, we emphasize being very predictable. And as Amanda and Shannon will start off here, they're going to talk about what we do now. But I can tell you this, that this team here for the last 3 to 4, almost 5 years, delivers on that 20 working days or less for the initial review, 10 days or less for the second review, 99% of the time. And that's very important to our customers, particularly our commercial customers, that they can plug that date into their construction schedules. But we want to do better with that, and they've devised a way to do that. So I'll ask them to come up and work through the PowerPoint, and I always also have some to hand out for you. You can look through.
Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Take it away, Amanda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Fine.
I get it.
Everybody have one?
Take it away.
Okay, one thing to remember is that all of the plans and permits that are brought into the office are reviewed on a first come, first served basis. We want to be fair to everybody, whether it's a large company or small. Currently, we have the process is 20 working days for initial plan review. All subsequent reviews after that are 10 working days. We do this as quickly as we can, try to be as fast as possible for each person. However, there are so many other things that our plan reviewers do on top of reviewing plans that we sometimes get the comment that it takes a little long, even though we do stay within our 20 and 10 working day time period. So to give you an idea of what all they do and why it takes us that long, are two of our plan reviewers, Rodney and Doug. They're going to tell you a little bit of what their daily life is and everything they do other than plan review. So let them take it away.
My name is Rodney Prince. I'm the fire plans examiner for the city, and I just want to thank everybody on behalf for giving us this time to speak for the department. Plans examiner is just a job title for us. We do so much more than plan review. On a daily basis, our number one objective is customer service. And the majority of the people that we see day in and day out are either current or potential first-time business owners. And the thing about that is these people come in, they've invested their whole life savings, they're trying to get their business going for the first time. They come to us not knowing what to do, they're scared to death, they don't know the code requirements, the zoning issues, what's required as far as codes, how the plan review process works, do they need an engineer, architect, whatever the case may be. So it's very important to us that when they walk away from us, that they fully understand and they're very comfortable about the decisions they're making with their business or whatever the opportunity they have in the future. And on the flip side of that too, when they go to talk to their engineers or architects or even other jobs, we work with architects, engineers, contractors on a daily basis. We always have issues when we're looking at plans. There may be discrepancies from what they're giving us to what it needs to be, so we're constantly on the phone trying to get things resolved with them and trying to make it the best, easiest, smoothest transition as possible for everybody. And with that in mind too, even we look at plans, you can't always see a full picture on the plans until the building's being built. So there may be issues that arise in the field where it was not really discovered when the plans came through as far as the architect or anything like that. And we have to actually go out on site and try to give them a resolution. You know, we've come to this dilemma, where do we go from here? So we're constantly shuffling, moving around, but like I said, the number one goal is customer service. And without the customer service, we're really nothing as far as the city. So, and I'll turn it over to Doug at this time.
Good evening. My name is Douglas Pornick. I'm the building plans examiner. Elaborating on what Rodney's saying regarding our jobs, we receive, him and I and the other plan reviewers, we receive many phone calls during the day from contractors, homeowners, people starting new businesses around the city. And so we're on the phone a lot, trying to answer, trying to help them as much as we can. On top of that, of course, like Rodney's saying, we're reviewing plans as soon as we can, turning them out. And a lot of the phone calls are people wanting to know when their plans are going to be ready. So, I mean, we try to help everybody who delivers us plans every day. And on top of that, along with reviewing the plans, of course, for each one of our specialty jobs, there's researching questions. We have the building inspectors calling us. We have homeowners. We have proposed business owners calling us, wanting to know, should I lease this? I get that many times. Should we lease this building? What are the code ramifications? And like Rodney said, they're scared sometimes of diving into this. And then, there's many times when we go on site, we meet them on site, and we tell them, depending on what they're going to do, well, there's different code requirements. So that's another aspect of our job. Another aspect of my job, I calculate all the road impact fees, the building permit fees, the conversion fees, the facilities tax fees for all the commercial projects that come through the city, the new projects before they get a building permit. Then one other item that we all have to maintain is our educational requirements, maintaining for the state and our ICC membership. So we have to keep those up so many hours. Every 3 years, we have to maintain our hours. So like Rodney said, there's many things that we do. But to get to this goal, our proposed goal for this, what Chris Bridgewater was saying, is that we're going to become more efficient in plan review and will remain responsive to our customers, and how we're going to achieve that. Alan Lewis will explain how we're going to achieve that goal. So.
Good afternoon. I have a question about some of the things that you talked about. You talked about the pre-inspection, pre-submittal inspection, when somebody's considering leasing a building,
Yes.
is there any cost involved for someone to request that sort of inspection?
No, actually,
Okay.
there may be 3 or 4 of us that go out and electrical, fire, building, and plumbing, mechanical, and there's no fee at all. We go out and provide that service.
One of the things that we look at is we get a lot of phone calls where people are wanting to lease a space. Of course, they're on a lower-end budget trying to get their business going, so they're not sure if the space that they're taking is even feasible code-wise for their use or their zoning or anything like that. So they ask us to come out and try to do a preliminary walkthrough with them to say, yes, you can do this, no, you can't do that, and it really helps them on the front end because we do get occasionally some people that go ahead and lease a space, and then there's some things that they cannot do in the space that they're wanting to do. So it really benefits us as staff, and it benefits them as a citizen to have us come out, and again, that's a charge that doesn't cost anything to them, that's just part of the customer service that we provide.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
To go on further, what our proposals do are hope to create additional time for our staff to be responsive to the city's customers. And one of our ways we look to achieve this goal is to complete the processing of permit applications for non-restaurant tenant build-outs, alterations, remodeling, and building additions less than 5,000 square feet within 10 working days. Currently, we're on a 20-day working day period with a 10-day working on initial and subsequent reviews. Those would be corrections and revisions that come in during the construction process. Our second part of this proposal, and still keep in mind, this is to create additional time for our staff to meet with customers during the day, is that all new buildings and structures greater than 10,000 square feet be sent to a plan review consultant.
Did you say 10,000?
Greater than 10,000 square feet.
Okay, I thought you said something else.
Okay. The applicant would choose the consultant from a pre-qualified list. The applicant would pay all review fees. The applicant would then submit the building permit application and plans to the Building and Neighborhood Services Department and the consultant simultaneously. The city would charge a plan review fee for the municipal code and zoning review of the plans, as well as permitting fees and inspection fees. Upon completion of the consultant's review, the applicant would then submit an approved set of plans to the city for us to keep for our records and also to have at the job site for inspection purposes. The permit would be ready within 5 days after the receipt of the plans in Building and Neighborhood Services Department. Basically, this is something we have never considered before, and looking at it, providing our customers with options that they have not had the opportunity to use before.
Questions?
Questions?
I was going to add a couple points.
I'm sorry.
It might be helpful.
You want to ask some questions?
Well, I'm not going to ask you a question. A couple points that came out of our discussion on a staff level when we looked at this. That group of smaller plan reviews, the 5,000 or less, that group, these folks say that's about 8 of 10 of the plans that we get in are in that category. So that's a significant number of the ones that come through the door fit that category that we want to move to a 10-day review cycle so that we'll be able to get those back more quickly in that way. The other point I'd make about the larger ones that we were talking about going to an outside pre-qualified consultant for review is that gives that person a chance, or that builder or developer a chance to look at their options, how quickly that consultant can turn it around, what the cost is from that consultant. All those are factors that they can weigh, and they can essentially shop it among these pre-qualified service providers, and then they come back to us, and then we'll be able to do our turnaround in 5 days, as they mentioned. So it has the promise for that, those folks to control their destiny a little more, too, in terms of choosing who does it and how quickly, or what the cost is involved in them doing it, and then gets to us, and we can process it fairly quickly from there. So I just think that's important, that context of how many will be cutting in half that outline in terms of how quickly it gets back to them. And I will say, even though our deadline is 20 days, we get it back as quickly as we can. We don't wait around until 20 days. Some will take 20 days, that's just the nature of it. But, these folks work very, very diligently to get them back as quickly as they can. And because they're confident in their ability to turn so many of these around is why we think we can look at breaking these out into these groups and significantly reducing the standard review time for those groups as we look at this. So just to offer that to you, and we'd be glad to take any other questions you have.
Alderman Peterson, you still have one?
Yes. The idea of the third-party consultant, would that kind of take over some of the things that our staff has had to do about, correcting things on the front end? I don't know much about it from Building Neighborhood Services, but sometimes in the planning department, it seems like they've wound up having to, help the client or the person who was submitting the development, had to kind of guide them in what they could do and couldn't do. So would the third-party consultant kind of take over that aspect of the plans? Because are you kind of saying, once the third-party consultant has looked at it, then they should be much quicker for our staff to, let's see, they've done enough work so that it would be quicker for our staff to look at the plan.
And the third party would be basically looking at code issues.
Right.
The municipal code and, of course, zoning reviews would be done by staff in BNS at that time.
But you've probably had to spend some of your time doing that.
Quite a few.
Up until now.
Quite a lot of time as far as pre-submittal meetings with architects and owners and designers.
So this would give our staff the opportunity to kind of, after a lot of the things have been ironed out, we would be looking at the plans.
Exactly.
Then.
And we would do spot checks of plans to make sure that the pre-qualified reviewers are doing them up to our expectations.
To be pre-qualified and stay pre-qualified, they're going to have to do a good job, and they have to continue to be thorough and effective in what they do, and that's part of what we'll be checking on throughout the process.
Will there be a formal process to, will there be guidelines for these people that they're checked off, or
in terms of the pre-qualified
process to pre-qualify somebody, and how will you maintain their qualification?
Right. They will put out a request for qualifications, an RFQ to anyone that wishes to submit to the city. We hope to have several that the customers could choose from, and so they, would have their choice, basically.
How will we resolve, say, a mistake that might be made by this outside third party?
Well, that would be, on our part, it would be a review of their plans coming back, and like I say, we would not be as intensive in our review, but it would be something that would have to be worked through at that point.
And another question I had, I know with the recession, we're probably not nearly as pressured to review things as we were back in '06. So do you have manpower to keep these goals of 10-day, 20-day turnarounds as things develop?
Well, that's why we're looking at the pre-qualified plan reviewers, maintain that service that we did do in the past, and to keep that level of service in place.
One more question. I know with residential, y'all don't do a standard. Are there enough situations in the PUDs that they have standard plans that are repeated within the subdivision, that it would behoove you maybe to review and approve a standard plan for a certain house. You know, I know that the larger places do this, so you don't have to do each one individually if there are no changes?
Yes, and right now, we do not do a basic residential plan review for houses, besides looking at the zoning requirements and obviously where it's situated on the lot. That's what we're looking for in the future, is to actually add a residential plan reviewer.
Let me emphasize that a little bit, to put that in context, given the large size of the homes we get. What Alan is saying is that the city of Franklin does not review building plans for new homes. So that means that when the inspectors get called out for an inspection, it's after the fact that they need to advise a tradesperson to tear something apart that should have been caught on the plans. And that has been the history, and this is taking a step to create time to try to put into the process to review building plans. And Alderman Skinner, to your point, you're correct, that in many planned neighborhood developments, there are certain models. So, for example, if you took a neighborhood that had 500 homes, there may only be a dozen different models with different types of facades that would have to be reviewed, but at least they would be reviewed before they start building them. And usually what you find is at the end of a subdivision, when the building is nearly complete, well, there's not many problems with code issues because they finally figured it out. Ideally, you'd like to review the set of plans before they started building. Just the thought, it's not this topic for discussion, but it is very relative to how people perceive your employees when they're working with contractors and homeowners.
Alderman Bland.
Okay. I guess I'm thinking more commercial properties. This really is both commercial and residential? Because
Just commercial.
Okay.
It's just commercial.
And why is restaurants eliminated out of this?
The difficulty in doing the reviews, there's a lot of added items on the interior of restaurants as far as kitchen hoods, suppression systems.
Dish machines.
Basically, it's an assembly occupancy, and there's a lot more detail that has to go into the review process.
Now, is this a unique idea that our wonderful staff came up with, or who else is doing things where they use a third party? I mean, is there any models that this has
There's many
happened?
municipalities around the United States that use third parties.
We're just kind of catching up.
Yeah.
And
We're doing that a lot, aren't we?
And I would say too that, you know, the breakdown of 5,000 square feet in non-restaurant is just the start. The point here is that when we institute this with your support, that the maximum is 10 working days. We guarantee it, right? That's important. It's important to business owners, it's important to design professionals and contractors in how they plan their project. If we can do it quicker, we'll do that.
Or else what?
Or else what?
Some unhappy,
Down the hall to Vernon.
No, or else
That's our expectation.
we contact, and that's the expectation.
Hey, we're going to do it in 10 days, or we're going to
less.
let you know that we didn't.
but we do.
But we do. And that's why.
That's great, but
That's why, it's about communication and delivering. And if we need to work overtime, if the workload is such, the staff will do that. And that's why we're committing to the maximum amount of time. And as we work through this process, begin using consultants, maybe we can institute residential plan review within this particular time, or include the restaurants within that 10 working day. But it's about making sure that we deliver 100% of the time as best as we can. And if we don't, our permit techs, and two of them are here, Shanna and Amanda, will contact the client before that time frame. Not after, before. And let them know that there may be a problem. But the plans examiners, right, Rodney? You're going to work through it and have it done. It's really not an option if we've made that commitment.
You still want to say something?
The only last question is, what's the extra financial burden on the people above 10,000 square, 5,000? Because, I mean, what were they doing prior to, and what are we expecting of them from a cost perspective? You know, I mean, are we putting the burden on the, let's open a new business in Franklin, but, oh, well, now we have to have this other expense that we've never had to incur? I asked a question that gave you a piece of paper. Yeah. You were waiting for somebody to ask.
Well, I think what you're going to see in this handout is we took an example of a building. And actually, Alan and the team did, took the new visual arts building out at Battleground Academy that was just built. And that building is total about 11,500 square feet. And if you just go down to the bottom, the consultant would charge approximately 3 to 4 times more than the city presently charges. And yes, we're not recapturing our time today. And that, but the option is that if they want to pay the consultant that fee or a larger fee, and that consultant can turn it around faster, it may be worth it. That's a small cost in the overall cost of a large building, a new building.
Is the consultant optional?
No, the consultant for 10,000 square feet or more of new buildings it would be mandatory if you would like us to commit to the quicker turnaround time for more of the routine, short-term plans that we get in.
Okay. So what was the problem? I heard, currently doing a good job. Are you trying to free up staff to be more efficient? Do we need more staff to do what we're currently doing? Or are you looking at, and I looked at new processes that will kind of create efficiency and then shoving some of the work out the door to consultants?
It's
Help me.
definitely not
What do
free
you
up
do?
time. It's to give better customer service. And how we're looking at this is the larger buildings, you take a corporate center or a Drury Inn, these are developers that's already got the land established. They've already went through the whole process. They've got everything they need to be put in it. When you get to the smaller ones like we're talking about somebody like me that they take their money, and I'm having it tied up right now waiting on plans to get through. Well, the big developers, a lot of them are from out of state or somewhere else. When they get through with that building, they're gone. We may never see them again. What we're trying to put everything into is the heart of that building, what's going into it, the people around in this area, the ones that's going to be here a while, the ones that's going to produce revenue for the city and revenue for themselves. So we're wanting somebody to look at the overall skeleton of the building and let us look at the heart that goes in it for the city.
Okay, skeleton part, okay.
And the smaller, as Eric mentioned, the smaller tenant build-outs are 8 out of 10 plans that come in, and currently we're guaranteeing a 20 working day turnaround. We want to narrow that in half to 10 working days, maximum.
In some of the larger buildings, and going back to the 20-day review, on a first-come, first-served basis, if we have a large building, say like a Drury Inn or hotel or a Target or anything like that, then these smaller jobs are behind that one, waiting for this big job. It may take 10 to 15 days to get through, when these smaller jobs may only take 2 or 3, but we have to take first in, first out. So we're holding these people up, they've got their money tied up, they're waiting to sign a lease, they're waiting to order material, whatever the case may be, and we're holding them up for these larger jobs when we could allow someone else to do it and let us help these people that keep doing it. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You would require somebody else to do it.
Yes.
Last question.
So in maybe some of these big things are I can see a hotel maybe that has a standard model that they've built all over the country that must qualify for national building codes. So what do they get, or are we expecting, are there things that different for Franklin that they would have to modify?
I will say this, codes should be standard across the United States, but unfortunately they're not. There's some municipalities and some states that allow this to happen, but it's not really code compliant.
We don't. If code calls for it, the minimum standard of the code is what we require. And we do get that often. We did it in Arkansas. Arkansas let us do it. I'm sorry, but we're not Arkansas. We don't let something slide by. If it's written, we hold it to the standard. If it's interpretation, then we get second opinions. But, I mean, that's the prestige of Franklin. I mean, that's the prestige of your staff, that you get that kind of service from us. When that building's built, especially me as a fire plans examiner, life safety, when that building's built, I know it's safe. I don't know what they do in Arkansas, and honestly, I don't care because I don't live there. But I know if it's here, when that job's done, my family will be able to get out of that building safely.
And we appreciate that.
We do adopt the international code. So there is a general standard, and you'll find if somebody's building this, there's a good chance they may have worked with one of these consultants in another community to do the same kind of plan review. Now, there may be certain things that we emphasize, or we want to make sure that, and we would build a relationship with the pre-qualified reviewers so they understand what Franklin expects, even in that world of international codes, but there's a good chance they've worked with some of these same people wherever they've developed, because it is not uncommon to use an outside reviewer to help you with, especially the larger projects of this nature.
So we're going to require these people be local people, or would be anywhere in the country?
They could be anywhere. They need to be qualified to do this kind of review, have experience, track record of doing this kind of review. Could be local, but there are a number of national firms that do this as well.
You have to remember, we're working on a digital electronic plan review process, so this will all be done electronically. Right now, we can use a delivery service for the plans, but pretty soon it'll be all digital.
And we expect that by the
summer.
By the start of the fiscal year, July 1, we expect we'll be in that realm. We've already implemented earlier this year the electronic scheduling for inspections. We've done that. You did on the planning and development side. You've combined your conceptual plans into the development plan, so you've shortened that by 60 days. So we're doing a number of things that streamline processes, but also focus on being responsive but still getting the job done effectively. So this is just another step, and you saw some great people work hard every day doing this stuff. So we're proud of them.
Well, great job from Building and Neighborhood Services, and thanks for your presentation.
Yeah, keep up the good
Thanks
work.
for being here. Keep up the good work.
I have one question, not from you so much, but how many employees do we have in this area compared to what we had, 5 years ago? Whenever we had X number of times building,
Well, we made several adjustments when the economy.
We've shifted a lot.
I'd have to go back and
I'm
look
just
at
curious.
that.
Yeah, I don't know that off the top of my head, but we have done a lot of adjusting. And
But what I think what the development community and some of the commercial businesses will tell you at that time, we could not commit to a time because you never knew how much the workload is. We've done that now, and they'd like to maintain that, even get better at it.
one of my commitments has been to staff and leadership in this area too, is that as we see activity perk up, that we continue to keep an eye on what our staffing is.
Yeah.
Because we do collect revenue in doing these reviews, and we need to be smart that we're being responsive, and that as activity perks up, that we are matching it with appropriate resources. So that's something we've always kept an eye on as much as we can, so that we're there and sufficiently staffed too as we see more activity.
The reason I ask that is because I'm thinking about the budget numbers, and I know, probably a year or so ago, we were getting, 25% of the building permit revenue that we got 5 years before.
At the peak, yeah. It
So
has returned some,
I
and
know.
we're seeing activity over the last quarter that's more in line with what we saw 3 or 4 years ago. So we're seeing better.
It would be worth looking at the numbers.
Yeah,
And the building permit revenue is, they're not affected by this, it's really just the plan review.
Yeah, let's move on, because I know number 5 is pretty important
Okay.
also. And we can come back to this if you need, but I think we've got a pretty tight timeline. Number 5, status update of flood fringe overlay non-residential zone property owner informational meeting.
Very, very quickly, last month at the Planning Commission Board of Mayor and Aldermen workshop, we talked about the flood fringe overlay and its impact on non-residentially zoned properties. We came away with some very good input and questions that came up, and decided to hold 3 informational meetings for the 160 or so non-residentially zoned property owners that are impacted by the flood-fringe overlay. And we're going to hold those meetings on Monday, February 27th, Wednesday, February 29th, and Monday, March 5th at 6 p.m. here in the boardroom. And we're going to talk about permitted uses of these properties, rebuilding of existing structures, and just the reuse of vacant structures, and how our ordinances affect that. But we are also going to send out letters to each of those residents, inviting them to a particular day and time, although they can come at any one, because with 160 property owners, we want to make sure that we do have sufficient room in this room. So just an FYI that those will be coming in the next week
And
or
will you
two.
send us a reminder?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And
And I
then,
would just say, everybody, I know Ann and Mike and I were the ones at the joint meeting. I know those aren't mandatory, but, I mean, it was really important, and I would just encourage you guys, if you have the time, I don't know how that's sectioned out, but to at least make it to one, because there's some deadlines coming up that were just mind-boggling to me, so.
following those meetings with property owners, we'll bring it back to this board for some further discussion and where we are, and some discussion of some options that staff is working on that look at how we approach the flood fringe overlay overall, and what you might want to do there. So this helps inform those impacted, and then we'll bring it to you for some direction.
Number 6, consideration request for property tax exemption on Franklin Theater.
I'll be glad to invite folks from the Franklin Theater up, and I see you have a county commissioner here as well. This is a request we've received to look at the opportunity under state law to provide a property tax exemption to a nonprofit-run performing arts facility. And Franklin Theater is in line with those qualifications, and has made that request of us, and wanted to provide that to you, and representatives are here tonight to talk about it, so take it away.
Well, I'm mainly here, I guess, to answer any questions or give you any history behind the resolution. The resolution is pursuant to a Tennessee law that allows an entity that is a performing arts entity, charitable, nonprofit, there's a lot of other hurdles, to seek tax exemption from the state. But in order to seek that tax exemption from the state, they have to first get the approval of the county commission. The county commissioners, being very sensitive to mandates, did not want to turn this around and do something that we knew would affect the other 2 taxing bodies in Williamson County, that being BOMA as well as the FSSD. So we are asking essentially for a non-binding vote. It's a vote that legally is not binding. However, I can tell you that the commission will weigh heavily your decision in all things that they consider towards the pursuit of this resolution. So obviously I support it, but I think I'm here mainly to possibly answer any questions that you might have as to how it works, what it does, and why it's before you now.
Questions?
I'm sitting here with my email up because I put out an email earlier today to get input from my constituents again, which I think is really important. And I'm getting a lot of answers back, and I just checked a few minutes ago. One of the questions somebody asked, why not? Why should they not pay their taxes? Good question. Can you want to answer that?
Well,
Or do you need to answer those?
Again, that's going to be ultimately a question for the state to answer, and there are a lot of hurdles that will have to be overcome. This would put them in a category with Carton Plantation, the Carter House, as an entity that serves the community, not as a profitable business, but as an entity that serves generations to come, not only historically, but as well as a way of life.
Yeah, I was going to say that the state, I think, has this legislation that lets multi-use performing centers not pay taxes, because it's really not a secret that they are not money makers. you are lucky for a multi-use performing center to break even. They usually require sponsorships, and we know that the small theaters and even some historic ones like ours, many of the counties in the state have decided to tax exempt them, just as a property tax exempt them, as a way to give them some relief in trying to make themselves be viable, because they are such community treasures, and we feel like that we've been entrusted to take care of this one and have put an enormous amount of effort and money into saving this, as many of the citizens, so that we could meet what the city had done a study for and identify as a community need, which was a 400-seat performing center. And after codes got through, we have 300 and something seats, but it's very close.
I'm Cyril Stewart, the president of the Heritage Foundation. When the Heritage Foundation took on the theater as a project, we knew, through talking with our consultants, that it would lose money. It's just not, a one-screen theater is not something that you can build and make money on. Otherwise, there'd be a lot more still around. And so over 10 years ago, the state enacted legislation that really looked at performing cultural arts groups that own their own properties. So it's not for those that lease, it's not for others. So there's not much precedent here that would apply to future instances. But since that time, there have been at least 10 Tennessee counties that have enacted this legislation, including Newport, Lawrence County, Manchester, Clarksville, McMinnville, Murfreesboro, Shelbyville, Crossville, Gallatin, and Nashville. And true to our consultant's word, we are having to raise money well in excess of the ticket take that we have to be able to offer the kind of programming that we think this community deserves, and we think that the community gets a much greater benefit from that.
Alderman Skinner.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me.
You know, we haven't talked about what the amount is. The amount is about $2,200 a year.
That's right.
This is a real bargain. I mean, for us to have something at night that draws tourists to downtown, and they can also visit other businesses that really don't have a reason to be open at night. I think for $2,200, the effect that this could have on tourism at night in downtown Franklin, it's a good deal.
And to that end, I have some, if you want them, some statistics here.
And that's
from Mark
what,
Shore.
I think that's my question. I really want to know from you all, what is the benefit city, county, state will benefit from? What are the end results? What are some good positives that will come out of this for our citizens locally, our citizens not only in the city, but also in the county, and statewide? What does this, what value? Give me the value added.
It's hard to... After Brian does that, I'm going to ask Dan Hayes, our new director, to come up, because he's looked at economic development of this. And so I'm going to yield my seat to him. Go ahead, Brian.
From a county perspective, it's hard to get a quantitative metric on just what the theater means. But obviously, I think if one were to name, the top 5 or 10 draws of tourism to this area, the theater would rank amongst them. I can tell you that tourism has grown just in the last year, 132%. How much of that is indicative of the theater opening about a year ago, I don't know, but obviously it would play a portion of that. Dollars given towards tourism, and that's essentially what we're asking for here, is $2,200 or $2,500, generally come back 6 to 1 to the taxpayer. So from a business standpoint, we spend less if we keep the theater open than if we allow it to close.
And I was going to also say, before Dan spoke, just a little window sill example is tomorrow evening we will be presenting Music Voyager at the Franklin Theater. That is a worldwide promotion that Tennessee Tourism engaged in. And the Heritage Foundation and the Franklin Theater decided we should be part of that, and we invested $10,000 in a marketing campaign worldwide that will feature the Franklin Theater. Dan?
Thank you. Well, let me introduce myself. I'm the new guy here, been in Franklin for quite a while, but just recently took on the position as the director of the Franklin Theater, and delighted to be here and honored to be entrusted with doing this, but your question's very much to the point, and let me just cover briefly, if I can, about 5 areas that I think that we're going to have a very positive impact. One of them is in terms of education. Our partnerships with Franklin Special School Districts, as well as the county schools, we're working with, having conversations with Columbia State, doing internships with other area universities, and trying to build those partnerships that will help them in achieving their missions. I don't want to pretend to tell you today I know exactly what their goals and their missions are, but we're confident that we can exceed what we're asking for in a tax abatement in terms of a return back on that, dollar for dollar and actually more in terms of the educational benefits. So that's one. The other one I think we need to acknowledge, just in our first 7 months now of operation, we've built kind of an identity as a place where money can actually be raised, where charitable endeavors can actually flourish. We're projecting that in 2012, the events that are hosted there for worthy causes, public causes, that are in excess of $500,000 will be raised for those kinds of charities. And they range from Children's Organ Transplant Association, New Hope Academy, Bridges Domestic Violence, and on. The list of what we've already done is fairly impressive, and there's more on the table. On an economic development standpoint, our projections for the first year of operation is there will be in excess of 80,000 people visit the theater alone. And how many more it attracts just because of its placement there and its synergy with other properties is likely greater than that, but that just alone of people who will come in for ticketed events that we host. The economic impact of that is in excess of $2 million a year, and certainly has an impact on everything from property values to sales tax revenues and all sorts of other things that it multiplies through the economy. Certainly from a historic standpoint in tourism, they've already spoke to that on some level, but those are obviously things that we know that it's doing and will continue to do. And then finally, maybe the most subjective of all, but likely one of the most important, is the theater being a catalyst for creativity in our community, where we're exposing cultural opportunities from a diverse set of genres of music, from art, theater, movies, and not just doing it in an entertaining way, but doing it in an educational way that also has social influence at the same time. So I think adding those things collectively up, I would go back to what one of our aldermen said, is the investment that we're asking in the partnership with both city, county, and other school districts to be a partner with us in this. This is our way of trying to make sure we're meeting our obligations, and as Cyril mentioned a while ago, being able to present things to the quality and standard that this community aspires to.
Very good. Alderman Barnhill.
You know, I guess certainly the economic impact to the city is the least, but one of the things is that that's the new bill. Whatever the old bill was, whatever your old tax assessment was, we've never received this, so in essence, I don't necessarily consider giving up something that we've not ever gotten.
So there you go with that common sense.
So you know, that's the point. I mean, it may be $17,779. Two biggest impacts are certainly to the county and to the city. You're asking us to pass a non-binding resolution that's going to go back to the county and have to be county approved by 2/3 of the county commissioners. So your challenge, certainly, irregardless of what happens here, is back at 2/3 to the county. So wish you well.
And one point of correction, because I misread, the 132% growth was over the past 4 years, not the last 1 year, and I apologize for that.
We'll take that.
The other thing, just while we've got the opportunity, we also want you all to understand that education, and we didn't just dream that up yesterday, at the Heritage Foundation for the last 30 years, we've been providing a Heritage Classroom program, and we fund that out of our pocket. It was about $6,700 last year, and we did programs for 3,000 school children.
I might make one comment, if I could, because I had a meeting today with some technology people, and they raved about the Franklin Theater. They had 250 people there for the industry collective, and they had 5 speakers from all over the country that spent a couple of nights in Franklin and they were looking at social media marketing. So that's helped Franklin, I would think. So they were raving about it. So I'm sorry, Brandy.
I want to speak to it. I was fortunate enough to be in on the ground level of kind of raising awareness of saving the Franklin Theater, and my business is on the donor wall. But the other thing that's not been brought up is that the Heritage Foundation and the theater also are making it affordable for everyone to come to the theater with $5 tickets. I mean, granted, if you want to go see Vince Gill or Sheryl Crow, that's a different level altogether, but I mean, to be able to go downtown, and from what I understand, that's pretty much going to be the standard. I'm not going to lock you in forever, but I mean, that goes to show they're not in it for the profit of it. I mean, that's very much fruit of that because you could charge twice that much, you know. So that's an important aspect for everyone to know, that it is made affordable so that everyone can enjoy. And I just think it's great that the county had the wherewithal to include us in their decision, because it's definitely more your burden than ours, so.
We thank you guys for what you do and respect your...
Well, most of the people are wanting me to absolutely support this. We've got a few that don't, but I want to read one comment that someone wrote in. It said, the value of the theater brings to both Franklin and Williamson County, the value that the theater brings to both Williamson County and Franklin go way beyond whatever taxes that can be collected. I can only hope that the powers that be will get the bigger picture, and with gratitude for all that has been given Franklin and the county, will offer a complete tax exemption for the theater, both at the city and county level.
Can we get that name so we can...
That's pretty good.
All right, number 7. There you go. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Hey, you might want to get those tickets available on Fandango.
Yeah.
Number 7, discussion of capital investment program. Seemed like we've been doing this forever, and I would love for us to reach some conclusion after our tour and after the opportunity to review, so we can go ahead and give staff direction. We're wasting some valuable time if we don't go ahead and give them some direction. So, Mr. Parker.
Well, let me step in real quick, just, that's okay. We have walked through this in terms of looking at the funding modeling, and we provided you another copy of what we reviewed back in December. Did the physical tour a couple weeks ago where we went and saw some of these opportunities, and really are looking for your guidance in terms of where you want to go. We've got the scenarios we've run to this point. If there is consensus around a group of items, that's great. We can move forward, and this is exactly the time where we bring sort of the priorities and the funding capacity together to say, okay, what are we comfortable moving forward with? One of the things we did try to provide, and if you'd like us to step through some of them, a number of these projects, especially as you look at the staff recommendation, are funded by pay-as-you-go capital. We've got some specific funding sources that are available to us to go ahead and move those projects forward. For example, the fire station design and fire station specifically at West Haven, but we're going to design both the West Haven and the Goose Creek stations at the same time. But there's sufficient facilities tax dollars to really look at moving those forward, both in design and as we move closer to that, look at construction down the line too. That facilities tax revenue is returned to a point that is a very viable option for us. So we tried to share with you a little bit of the detail that's behind this. I think last night we sent something out that gave you a little more detail of what's behind what was in this, that shows the differing sources associated with these projects, and a number of them do come from kind of outside of our general obligation efforts here. But we're glad to talk to you about any other questions you have, and really are just seeking your guidance on where you want to go next, and where there's a consensus around a group of projects and group of next steps.
Can we go on and say also, on looking at the staff recommended scenarios, that number 5, that the park at Heart, if you just spoke about the second one.
Oh, yes.
There. The third one really can be funded from hotel motel.
That's the Harlansdale, yeah, that's
Right.
hotel motel.
And the let's see, number 5, the McEwen Drive and Wilson Pike intersection, that also will not require any additional borrowing.
Yeah, you've really already funded that project through the $1 million that was provided by Williamson County Schools and the facilities tax that was collected through the county path that we identified for funding the remainder of that project. So you've really funded that project already. It just hasn't moved into bidding and construction, so we wanted to keep it on this list. But you really have already identified all the necessary funding to do that element.
And to me, that was a very important aspect of what you've done with the staff recommended scenarios. And my overall concern would be in terms of something that that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approved, in September of 2009, that on the Hillsborough Road and some of the other things, some of them have already been borrowed for, and in fact, some of them completed, such as Columbia Avenue. But Hillsborough Road still has 2 $5 million requirements for being borrowed from here on out. And so, even though we approved it a long time ago, we still haven't gotten the money to construct it. So, seeing that, and also, we also haven't said that really our new project, that came up from the previous time that we had committed on this, is the Public Works facility. Obviously, that came to be number one on our new projects there because of what we've already agreed to do. So looking at those two, I really like the aspect of many of the others that did not require any additional borrowing of money or adding to our debt. So really, even number 8 there, the Century Court Beasley Drive is like $500,000, which compared to so many other things is, makes it good. I really could support the staff recommended scenarios, except for the South Carruthers, which does require a fairly substantial borrowing of new money there. But the rest of it, probably looks better than what we as aldermen.
You brought up a point about we still haven't borrowed some of the money for Hillsborough Road. That's in the modeling, though, the financial modeling already.
Yeah, we have assumed that.
Yeah, it's already been, it's in the modeling.
Let me say something about the modeling, though. As you look at this, there are 2 parts of on the modeling that, have a concern about. One of them is the, general fund balance as a % of operating revenue, but the other part that really is, that's okay, really, everything. The one on page 13, where it talks about the debt affordability ratio, even with the base committed, our approved, let's see, how do I say it? Our debt affordability, the debt service as a % of operating revenue, our policy states that it would be 8%. If you look even on the base committed, we're up to 12%, which really means 50% more than our policy that we, agreed to ourselves. And so that's one reason I'm thinking about just kind of the base committed, except that in addition to the base committed, we have these other things that have their own funding. So really, they would not add to any of the debt service there. So that's the reason I was saying, except for the South Carruthers Parkway, the rest of them don't add to the debt service. So that's the reason I was saying that I could support that. I mean, the $500,000 for the Century Court Beasley, is not that much there. So, that's the reason that I was saying not just the base committed, but if you look at scenario 5, the staff recommendations, even including the 3 point, well, that's, I guess, the two borrowings of 3.6 million wouldn't be much more than that. And if actually you take the scenario 5 without the South Carruthers Parkway, I believe it would be the same as the base committed. Do you see what I'm saying?
Pretty much, yeah.
So I wouldn't, would you say that?
It would just be slightly higher because you'd have the,
$500,000 for
you'd have the Beasley, and you'd have the design for the McEwen to the McEwen-Wilson east to the city limits, which is $250,000, so it's not real big. So there's a few smaller ones in there, but by and large, that's not going to move that very much.
And so, as I say, I just kind of felt like that, that they obviously, the staff did a good job. I think we do have to make the policy, but it seems to me that they were considering the money there, and I think that had been mentioned before, but it was really brought home to me whenever I started looking at that.
Many of the things that we've done, we've accelerated and borrowed the money because it was cheap money, and many of the projects have not been spread out quite as much as we would have liked, normally would have done, just because of some of the opportunistic, some of the opportunities we had. So.
Hillsborough in particular, just as a reminder, we had the opportunity to participate in the recovery bonds, Build America bonds, and for folks that may not remember, that's a 45% rebate that we get from the federal government on that debt. So that's a tremendous benefit for us. And in fact, when we calculate our debt service, we have to calculate that full debt service without taking that rebate. So it's actually, in reality, a little bit less. But that is something that we benefited from, and so we did end up front-loading the debt a little more than we expected when we did this funding plan a year and a half ago. But, long-term, that was absolutely the right thing to do and is going to save us money as we deliver the projects.
I just have one comment. This number 3 from the staff recommendation, the parks at Hollandale, what does that $131,000 do?
It's really kind of next steps in terms of protecting the barn and the house, and we've got some grant dollars that we're leveraging also for both those roofs to protect them. So that will be part of what we'll be doing, and then also just really looking at next steps in terms of preservation out there. So there's more to come on that, and in fact, hotel motel tax is going to have an opportunity to fund some things going forward. We will finish payments on the conference center December of 2012. So that will free up a component that will help us look at some other projects and next steps. In particular, based on the board policy at this point, which has been to look at areas like a Harlansdale or an Eastern Flank where you've got sort of a natural tie into those hotel motel dollars. But there are going to be some opportunities there. And actually, one of the things I think we'll look at is sort of building a little mini capital plan in that category as well as when we have those new dollars come available.
And projecting out some of those new hotels coming online as well. Do we have any, Russ, maybe for you and Eric, but do we have any, I thought we had some funds left in, what am I talking about, the Build America bonds? Do we have something floating out there that we have to use
Build
by a
America,
certain
they're all
time?
identified for that Hillsborough project.
But isn't there a deadline that we have to use those by, or we lose them?
No, you don't lose them. We'll get into calculating some arbitrage, which is going to be very minimal at this point, given where interest rates are. But it will create a little more paperwork for us if we don't get in it. We have like a 3-year window, is that right?
Oh.
So we're still in the midst of that, but we identified the Build America bonds for the southern portion of that project.
That's right.
Because they wanted us, as part of it, you had to designate sort of a redevelopment or reinvestment zone. And so we incorporated the Columbia Avenue project, and we've incorporated this leg of the Hillsborough project, because we felt that sort of made sense and fit those descriptions, as well as the 3rd Avenue North project. So those all fit in that window, both geographically, but then also the use of those bond dollars. So that's what we'll be doing.
And also that Carruthers. Now, we've got that listed as number 2. Carruthers, Falcon
From your
Creek to-
priority voting, yeah.
To Harpeth River. Now, is that the area identified that where we've got developers ready to build? I mean, they've got funding, they're ready to go, they're waiting to go. We don't, our issue in the past has been, you know, development before infrastructure, and we're trying not to let that happen. So, and then we've got a new builder out at Simmons Ridge coming in there to finish that out. So we're going to have more houses, we're going to have about 900 houses going online here at some point. So my issue here is I don't want to let that road slip away from us, because I think it's going to be very important, or we're going to have the same issue that people always call us on, is infrastructure coming after the fact of development, and we've seen that happen too many times in my ward, so I'm not interested in seeing that again. Where are we with that, as far as you see?
Well, the developers have indicated to us that they're ready to go. Now,
Yeah, I
I
know.
can't speak for sure that they are, but
they've got
that's,
funding.
if you recall, part of the agreement with the Nichols Bend is that they
Yeah,
would
Nichols
dedicate
Bend.
the right-of-way,
Mhm.
and then also some of the field that we have to have for the roadway. So it's an integral part of the project itself. But you know, I can't speak for certain that they're ready to go if we build the road, but that's what they've indicated to us and you both, I mean, the board, but.
We've been told multiple
Right,
times.
so-
There's
That
two.
they have the funding.
Yeah,
There's a decision point on this one as well, where there's, and maybe a little more so on the table than when we first looked at these projects, is a phasing north to south or south to north.
Right.
And they both have development impact. I think the going north, or south to north is a little more expensive.
It's a little more
Because it
expensive.
involves the bridge.
Correct, and it's longer.
So, you know, I think that those
north or
are
south.
things to think through, that may be still an issue on that, and we can look at some analysis in terms of development impact, maybe to try to help that. I know planning's been working on something related to that. We may be able to
Well,
give you some
I've-
additional information on that one if you want it.
Yeah, because I've talked to people in the real estate business, well, not just realtors, I'm talking about doing some research there, and I have talked to those developers, and they are ready to go, they have the funding. And the other thing is, we're going to end up, we're bringing more people in, we're going to need more housing, and the scenario looks like the new housing is going to be warranted. So I'm just a little, you know, squeamish about where we are with that Carruthers.
I want to speak to one thing just about this. Looking at borrowing the extra $3,600,000 will cost us in debt service per year about, did we say $350,000?
Probably about, let's say about 120, or 220,000, about 70,000 per million.
Okay.
Is that-
But,
yeah, that's-
well, maybe mine was.
Yeah.
For part. But the thing is, though, that is going to have to come out of our property tax that generally goes in, that would otherwise go into our general fund, because that would have to be borrowed, and our road impact fee right now is only paying for the debt service and the principal and interest right now. So that's would have to be new money coming out of there. That's the reason I like this other, because these other items here don't require that we have to add to our debt service. And as I say, if you're thinking about that, that means, you know, that it's going to come out of what we would be using for other things in our general fund.
Mayor.
Alderman Barnhill.
I've always, in the past, advocated the South Carruthers Parkway, and I still will. I think it would be a mistake on our part not to include South Carruthers. That's certainly, even without the two that was mentioned, you still got Ladd Park and you still got Berry Farms being built, and the development that we expect to go out there. I think would be a tremendous short-sighted mistake on our part to not include South Carruthers in that. I understand that there's ratios, and I understand that there's issues, and I understand that there's things that we may need to look at, but to not include that in there is just not particularly good planning, as I see it, on our part, with what I believe is the next Boone Place that's going to happen in Franklin, and that's the Goose Creek area. So I would prefer to see South Carruthers be included. And as far as north to south or south to north, we need to look at that. I think there are probably some advantages to both. So look at those, split those out, give us a cost on both of those. And we have certainly looked at costs that are less than $7.2 million for the north to south portion of South Carruthers.
Now that's our staff's
Yeah,
idea of it. and not-
There was a much lower number
That's right.
floated at one point, but staff looked at it, and this is the number we're comfortable with, so.
That's fine.
As opposed to 18 million for the whole thing.
Other comments?
I want to add one other thing that kind of is a late addition that we talked a little bit about, that I want to have you think about, and that's that, what I'm going to call the McEwen connector,
yeah, we need to talk about
that would help bridge what we've done on McEwen 3.
The roundabout.
Yeah, go from the roundabout into existing McEwen. That's somewhere around $2.5 to $3 million, we think. But really could be important in terms of flow out there, and I think helping prolong the life of what's out there so that we can live with that and make that work for a longer period of time and not feel like under the gun so much to do McEwen 4 in its whole, in all its glory, I guess I'd say.
Watch what you say there.
I mean, I think it does help you with that, because you're improving the intersection in the eastern portion already with the project that we're doing in conjunction with the school money, and we've made the improvement on 3, and if we can connect back in and help that traffic circle fully function, I think is a real opportunity. But it is something we didn't really anticipate when we put this out there, and is something that our staff has looked at and has a lot of promise, I think, for us.
What was the number you just quoted?
If I remember correctly, it's about $2.5 million to make that connection.
Where are we on those plans?
We're nowhere. We haven't funding for it yet.
No, where are we? I mean, what have we done to prepare to bring this to the board?
Nowhere.
We looked at.
We've done some.
We
We've done some.
We did the
design?
estimated cost for what would be required, and that's the
Don't tell me we
$2.5
haven't
million.
done anything. We have.
Yeah.
So that's what we've done. I mean, and we're bringing it to you, and brought it to you, and explained it to you. But it wasn't included in any of these scenarios that were done. We did it after the fact,
Well,
so.
I think we're going to have to bring that to us like ASAP, because this thing is something that's not going to hold up over there very long. We are going to have major traffic tie-up issue that's going to be a bottleneck. And I would ask that come to us in the next month. We can have it on the work session.
Alderman Skinner.
If our main concern right now is that there's traffic flow that's not working, the roundabout and the intersection south of it, have we considered redoing the roundabout and doing that a signal intersection and put that in tandem with another light that would be at the next street south? And what kind of improvement could we get from that? And what would the cost be versus the new street through there?
Well, you don't
You see what I-
signalize a roundabout. I mean, you
Hey, well, you have to redo the
You
intersection.
have to rebuild
Tear it
the
up.
intersection,
Wanna tear
so there's,
Looking at $2.4 million versus, if our concern is traffic flow.
Well, if you tore up the roundabout and put in a signal, how much money are we talking about? We're probably back to almost the 2 million.
no,
Or
I
one-
I wouldn't
I
even
wouldn't know,
hazard,
but
I
you
wouldn't
wouldn't-
hazard to guess what that would be.
I would not support tearing up the roundabout.
I mean, you could put in signal at the other intersection, but we could look into that and see if it's a feasible solution, but
What signal, what intersection?
the existing McEwen and Oxford Glen Drive.
We don't want to tie
South of
that
the
up with
roundabout.
No,
you
it's
know,
south, the next section south, where the
You
next
don't-
intersection happens.
Where you stop
It'd
signs
have to be a
are.
tandem light where those would function together.
Where the light is, where you go up Oxford Glen or go to the left on McEwen?
Yeah, where the,
Well,
where
you
the
don't-
stop signs are.
Well, you
It's where
don't
the
want to
stop
tie
signs
up
are.
traffic with a light there, because then you're going to bottleneck the traffic even worse.
We've got other lights that are tandem that work.
No,
work
but you've
fine
got
right
people
here
coming
downtown
into a
Franklin.
roundabout with no light, and they can't go anywhere then if you've got a light right there.
Do y'all
So we can talk about
understand
that
what I'm-
later.
I understand what you're talking about is that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we can get the
I don't know if we-
benefit or not out of it. but-
Well, let's,
that's all.
I think we've given staff some pretty good direction to move on, and so it's good. So let's move on to number 8, consideration proposed ordinance 2012-13, an ordinance to amend section 14-202 of the Franklin Municipal Code relative to the fees for the planning review process.
Good evening. This is basically a technical change. What we did, I believe that we brought to you the last time, the idea of changing our ordinance to allow for a $600 fee for development plans rather than the $300 and $400 for concept and regulating plans. At the time that we brought that to you, it was in section 14-202. We had wanted to move all of the fees and penalties into Chapter 22, and what we're doing with this resolution is eliminating that chart, all of the planning fees, review charts from section 14-202, and then the next ordinance will then replace them into Chapter 22.
Question?
With this lower fee, have you projected any revenue loss, and how does that work out?
We have not really projected revenue loss. We're anticipating a better year. So that's where we're coming. Yes.
Number 10, consideration City of Franklin, we just considered 8 and 9, so we're going to move on to 10. Consideration City of Franklin Contract Amendment 2010-103B with Community Housing Partnership, a community-based development organization.
We basically have done some approved CDBG projects with community development, based development organization. They've managed in doing the low income housing project a bit of a profit. And there's some options for us to look at how we reprogram that. We can bring it back through the whole mechanism of the CDBG process, or we can allow them to apply it to other eligible similar projects, which seems to be a lot cleaner way, have them, roll that right back into another low-income development project. So that's what we'd like to do, if that's okay with you, and Vernon can speak to it in more detail.
Not really.
No, it's down.
Everybody good? Number 11, consideration proposed ordinance 2012-03 to be entitled, an ordinance to rezone 40.35 acres from high residential district R3 to civic and institutional district CI for the property located at 608 Mount Hope Street.
This is a request from Hard Bargain to rezone that property from HI to CI, or from high residential to CI, in order to use a house they have on the property as an office and community drop-in center. Generally, cemeteries are CI throughout the city, so this makes it conforming with the other standards.
That's appropriate.
Number 12, consideration proposed resolution 2012-08, a resolution authorizing adoption and implementation of amendments to the historic district design guidelines.
Good evening. The Franklin Historic District Design Guidelines were completely revised in 2010 to provide additional guidance, more updated substantial guidance to the public, the Historic Zoning Commission, and staff regarding exterior alterations within our historic districts. Upon working with the document for the last year and a half, staff offers the proposed amendments as listed in Appendix A, which provide additional guidance, clarifications, and formatting revisions. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
You did a pretty involved process, an additional neighborhood meeting, all to make sure folks were aware of what we were proposing.
You really said that well. Thank you. Number 13, consideration resolution 2012-02, a resolution to affirm compliance with federal Title VI regulations.
This is actually something I pulled a couple meetings ago, because it was originally sort of aligned with the 3-Star program that the State Department of Economic Development runs, or actually that program seems to be on its way out. But we realize that it's still important for us to affirm our compliance with Title VI overall for the myriad of federal dollars that come to us either through state agencies or to us directly. And so this just will help us affirm our compliance.
This annual, this is...
Yeah, we do it every year. And I probably shouldn't have pulled it then, but it was written towards the 3-star, and so we just updated it to be more general.
Number 14, consideration memorandum of understanding with Williamson County regarding recycling. Any questions on that one?
None, thank you.
I need a motion to move into executive session at 6:45.
So move. So move.
Second.
Vote motion second. All in favor say aye.
She didn't get it, correct?